Hello and welcome to this episode of the NAVS channel. My name is Slavika Bogdanov, and I launched this channel to help you survivors and victims of narcissistic abuse get more awareness, education, and tools, of course, to get out, get help, and of course, end up thriving the best life that you can have. So thanks for joining, and I appreciate if you share this video, subscribe to the channel, because evidently my goal here is to bring the most amount of tools and education to you guys. That's really why I do it. And so sharing and liking the videos, of course, bring me joy because I see that the videos have been seen. Yay! So thanks so much. And I appreciate, I have a lovely lady here from Australia. I'm in Florida, so it's like the other side of the world, here today with us. She's a survivor, but also a consultant. So I welcome Ali. Thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Slavika. It is an absolute pleasure to be connecting with you and from someone, yes, on the other side of the world, and all your viewers as well.
Yes, thank you so much. And now, as we said, through Zoom, we can do everything. We can consult, we can help others, we can talk. So it's wonderful, right? Now we can connect to everybody in the world like that. So I'm really, really happy to have you here today. And so as I said, I think you are a survivor, but also a consultant. So I wanted to have a little bit of your story, what happened to you, and of course, what happened, how you got out, and how you became a consultant now. So what kind of relationships were abusive in your experience?
So my story and my experience actually spans over the last 25 years of my life. So half my life, basically. And I have survived 2 abusive marriages. And only recently, it's only 5 years ago that I actually left a toxic work environment because of a very narcissistic boss. And so that was me surviving sexual harassment and workplace bullying and manipulation. So there's been a lot of, several times when I have had to, A, deal with narcissistic people, and B, rediscover myself, who I was, because of the way I was treated and the resulting self-belief or lack of self-confidence that came to me. So, it really, the first real full-on experience for me was in my first marriage. I got married very, very young, at what I consider young, at the age of 20. And so by the age of 23, we had so much going on in our lives. It was actually insane. So we had 2 children under the age of 18 months old. So they were born 13.
That's a lot already to deal with.
I know, right? It was, I mean, they're beautiful. And I wouldn't have it any other way, ironically now, but at the time it was just insane. And I was suffering postnatal depression from having, from several reasons, but particularly from having those 2 pregnancies very close together. My husband resigned, had lost his job, so we actually had to start a home-based business. We didn't have a lot of income, but we had a mortgage that we couldn't afford. And everything in our household was like secondhand or donated to us. And, you can imagine this, all that together was a lot of stress. And so I didn't actually know that my husband was also taking drugs at the time. I wasn't aware of that. So all of this kind of resulted in his narcissistic tendencies, and in the form of domestic violence towards me. It was emotional and mental and financial abuse. And of course, at the time, I didn't know what it was. But it just got to the point where, and a bit of a trigger warning for anyone watching here, but I literally got to a point one night when I had pills. Like, my husband was away for work, and I'd just gone around the house and collected a bunch of pills in my house. And I had them in it was like a Hunger Games moment almost. I had them in my hand ready to take, and I'm bringing them up to my mouth. And there's only 2 things that stopped me from doing that. and it was my children who were asleep in their beds at the time.
Right, of course.
And I can't leave my little babies alone, and I want to be around to see them grow up. So they saved my life. Yeah.
Wow. And when you say that there was financial abuse, by what do you mean by that?
So like he would kind of leave me with no money, you know. I mean, I had babies who had to have nappies. He would leave me with no money or little money. You know, I'd only have a certain amount of money to be able to go out and buy the groceries, and it just wasn't enough. It actually got to the point where he didn't see that I was doing a good enough job, so he ended up taking all my credit cards away from me. So if I was home alone, and I didn't drive either, if I was home alone with the children and I needed nappies, I had no way of getting them. You know, it seems so simple. You know, it seems such a simple thing to have nappies, but it was like I just had my choices taken away from me, and I couldn't even look after my children the way I needed to. So that, you know, I actually ended up starting my own bank account on the side. You know,
yeah, that's a great idea, actually, to start putting money aside, hiding it actually from the abuser, because that's one way to control the victims is by controlling the wallet, of course. And so what happened? What was the trigger that made you realize that this was a serious, you know, abuse and you needed to get out? Or what was the turning point in your life where you decided, I'm leaving this place?
The turning point was actually that moment when you know, that night when I didn't.
Oh, wow.
It was like, I honestly hadn't realized how bad I had gotten in my mental state. And I didn't know what domestic violence was. I didn't know what abuse was, or, you know, I thought I did, but it was like, you know, my idea of abuse or domestic violence was physical, as I think it happens to a lot of people. And back then, it wasn't something that people spoke about a lot. So I came to the conclusion that this isn't good enough. I've got to figure out a way to keep myself safe and then my children safe. And so my dad, God bless him, he actually saw what was happening. And he asked me, he said, do you need help? And I just said, yes, I do, but I don't know what help I need. So he ended up taking me to a counsellor at our local government. It was a free counselling service. And they actually helped name what was happening to me.
Oh, wow.
And once I had the name to what was happening to me, I was like, oh, okay, wow, that makes a whole lot of sense. And they actually offered to help me get out of that relationship. And it wasn't, I don't think it was 2 weeks later, and we had left. Me and the children had left that household. It wasn't, and you know, when I say that, it sounds like it was an easy decision, but it really wasn't. It was, I have to say, one of the toughest decisions of my life to make. But it was one of the best.
Of course. And it is a life and death situation, because when you see that you hit rock bottom and that you're at that level of desperation, and that the only way out is to get ourselves out completely of the equation is not a nice place to be. So of course that is a really big alarm. And so you left him with the 2 children, and then you had a second marriage, correct? That also
I did, and something that I didn't realize at the time was, you know, when I became a single mum, part of me was like, yes, this is really good. This is where I want to be. You know, I'm free. This is wonderful. But a bigger part of me, having the way I was brought up as a Christian, and it was like I had to have a significant other in my life to make me a complete person. That was the way I saw myself. It was like, okay, I'm a single mum, but I don't have that person to love me. You know, I needed that love, and I felt like to have a partner or a husband complete me. So I actually went out searching, I went online. I went on an online dating site and very quickly found someone. It was almost like the first person I found who was ready to give me attention. And so we quickly got together. We ended up getting married. And, you know, he was narcissistic in a different way, similar but different, right? He wasn't maybe as angry and as violent as my first husband, but he was very, very manipulative. And so, you know, he ended up becoming my third child. And I didn't need that. So this time in this second marriage, I'm grateful because I was able to see it for what it was a lot quicker. I still suffered through it, you know, don't get me wrong, but but it got to the point was just like, I don't need a third child. I've got my actual babies come first, and I don't need to be looking after you as well. So this one, basically, I said, get out. I took control a bit more this time, I'm proud to say.
That's a good thing. Yes, well, good for you. I mean, and evidently, thank goodness that when we have an experience like that, we can potentially have our radar up or be more cautious or more careful the next time around to not attract again another abuser. And so how long ago was that you kicked him out?
I've got to think back. It was about, oh, hang on, I've been with my current partner now for 10 years. So I think it's about 13 years. 13
That's
years.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, so then you went into a job position that then you got into it again, another narcissistic relationship without your, of course, now you have no control over having a boss that's narcissistic.
No, and unfortunately, you know, the job that I was in, it was actually a job that I got to ironically help support the family while I was with my second husband. But this was a job that I loved. It was a career that I was building for myself. I just loved it. And the original boss that I had was really good at what she did. She was so good, you know, and she helped me. I actually grew my career from a part-time receptionist in the front office of a school to the full-time office manager in 10 years. And the thing that happened though was that really good boss retired, and then another one came in, and we thought he was going to be fantastic. It didn't take us very long. It wasn't just me, it was everyone, to see that he was quite a narcissist. He was just, you know, he just turned what was a wonderful work environment into an extremely toxic one really quickly. And so me working in the front office of the school, it's like, if anyone's worked in an office, it's like the hub. You see everything, right? You've kind of got your eyes everywhere. And so I don't know why, but it seems like I was targeted. Maybe he saw a strength in me that he felt he had to try and beat down. And I think that's what it was. To this day, I swear that's what it was. But there is a lot of, you know, manipulation. Because of that manipulation, the colleagues that were in my team that we were working really well together, started bullying me. And I don't even honestly think that they realized that's what they were doing. But that's what happened. And then on top of that, I'm watching many of my colleagues be sexually harassed, mostly verbally, but still it's sexual harassment. And it was happening to me as well. Mm-hmm. And it got to the point, and I also didn't realize, you know, it was similar to my first marriage, but I didn't realize, or I wasn't wanting to acknowledge the physical and the emotional and the mental toll it was having on me to watch all this happen and have it happen to me. And it got to a point where a bunch of my colleagues said, Ali, you have seen probably the most. Would you be willing to report this guy for sexual harassment? And of course, when they asked me that question, my whole history, you know, the history of domestic violence, the history of all the other abuse I'd had, I felt an obligation, not only to myself, but to them, to say, yeah, I think I have to. I think I need to, for all of us. And so I did. And when I went and spoke to a panel. I put in 3 reports against him, and I went and spoke to a panel. And it got to the end of that panel, and they said to me, the last question they asked was, what do you want to happen to this guy? And I couldn't answer it. That was the moment that I had a complete mental breakdown. I just lost it altogether. I just cried, and my support person who was there just ended the interview. And the very next day, I went off on what here in Australia is called work cover. It's a government support system to help us in work if we are unable to work. And so I ended up, being diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, and depression from that situation. And it wasn't long before I just resigned that job because I couldn't, I just could not face the thought of going back. And so hence another recovery journey to find out who Ali was again. And this time it was like, okay, this is the last time this is ever going to happen to me. I'm not going to let anybody treat me like this again. Enough is enough. That's where I got to. So it's,
that's well, good for you. At least you got out of that as well. It is very difficult in a work situation because there's money involved. Manipulation is at its best because, as we know, narcissistic abusers, they're able to manipulate others against us and manipulate everybody one against the other, so they can isolate everybody and rule on the bunch. So they're really, really good at that. If there's one thing.
I thought I was losing my mind. I really did. I thought I was losing my mind. He was telling me one thing and others were telling me, I just didn't even know what was going on. It was so frustrating for it, to put it mildly.
Of course, yes. And then I know they also trigger to make you angry in front of others, so you lose your control over your emotions, and then you're the one who looks like the bad person in the bunch. And so it's always the same patterns that they use, and eventually we recognize them. Unfortunately, a lot of victims absolutely don't, are completely taken aback and taken into this world of confusion and madness, where you like you said, you have the feeling that you're the crazy one and you lose your mind a little bit. Meanwhile, this is completely destroying your self-esteem and your self-worth more and more. So it's really it's very dangerous for the person, because you don't feel like you can grab onto anything real that to hold on to, and at the same time you start questioning yourself more and more, and it's like a downward spiral of insanity. So I totally understand what you've been through, and it's good that you're able to put your foot down. I had a really good conversation a week or two ago about that, about when survivors put our foot down, but we have to be careful not to go to the other side and become the narcissist we have avoided. So I don't know if you feel that, or if you've seen that, or if you feel that, but sometimes I feel we're so knowledgeable about what it is to be a narcissist that sometimes we have perhaps a tendency to slip a little bit into that position just because we're so accustomed to it, and then just catch ourselves say, that's not the person I want to be. I want to be me. And as you said, going on the journey of discovery, who is that me really? Who am I? That's an important journey, I think, for all of us that are survivors, correct?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Figuring out who we are. And I think for me, as I went on that journey, and honestly, I'm still on it. I think I will always be on it because we're always growing. But for me to be on that journey and try and figure out who Ali was, yes, I totally agree with what you're saying. We get to a point where we feel strong, so strong, and or we like to think we feel strong, and yes, we do have a tendency to almost, because it's like we want to prove to everyone that we're okay. And it's not just to prove to everyone, it's to prove to maybe to the people who have treated us, to the other narcissists who've treated us like that, prove to them that we're okay. And yes, and that's when it's a fine line between us almost becoming like them and, you know, choosing to just be the beautiful person that we can actually be. And so, yes, I will say, quite honestly, there are a couple of times that I know that I've had to kind of really become self-aware of how I'm talking, what I'm saying, and almost like bring it back, you know, because I know that's not naturally me. I know that.
Yeah, I totally know what you're saying. So it's vicious for us because we are empaths. We're usually more sensitive to others. We're really more understanding. We take things to heart. But because we've been hurt so deeply at such a cellular level, that we have the tendency to take that role of the aggressor, so that basically it's the never again, never will I be that victim again. And it is a learning process, I think, for everyone to learn to know what triggers us, and to know how to, you know, to be the godly person that we can be, to be the good inside of us. I pray often every morning, asking, you know, God, please replace everything that is not godly with just godly energy, so that I can be the best image here, and speak to others in that sense, and not be tempted by nothing that is not light. So so now that you moved on from all of that, so you created your own coaching program, or tell me a little more of how you transitioned from the job, PTSD, and then building your own beautiful consulting business.
Sure. So it's actually quite ironic. Even as I was going through all of this stuff, I've always had this thought in the back of my mind, knowing that even though I was going through it all, I was somehow going to take what I was experiencing and help other people. Now, up until recently, I hadn't known what that was. And so, keeping this thought in mind, a couple of years ago, I actually started my coaching business. And I started coaching women specifically who had survived trauma in their life. And trauma is, you know, it's different to everybody. But it ended up, I mainly helped people who had survived similar types of trauma to me. And that was amazing. And I just loved helping those women. I have since transitioned into business coaching to help ladies who, again, might have had really significant trauma or changes in their life, and they have to create an income for themselves. Like, for instance, me, when I left that job, I couldn't face going back into the workplace again. I just, you know, I actually tried. I went and had another couple of jobs, and my anxiety came back again. So it got to the point, it was like, okay, I need income, that's logical, but I want to create somehow to bring that income in so I can help the people that I understand. So this is why I've come into business coaching now. And I help ladies start, build and grow their businesses. And I specifically help them in the areas of mindset first, because you need to get your mindset right to be able to run a successful business. And when you've been through that trauma, that's a big ask. So that's why I concentrate on the mindset first. Then we work on the motivation to set goals and plans. And then we get to the marketing side of building the business. So there's a strategic plan in the way I teach and coach.
No, that's really good. I have a question. I don't know if it's apropos or not, but crossed my mind. What have you dealt with, or what would you do with self-sabotage? The entrepreneurs or the startups who start something, and then you see their potentially sabotaging their success,
Yeah.
potentially because of low self-esteem or the trauma they've lived that is bringing them down. What do you do in that in those circumstances?
Well, these are actually most of the people, most of my clients come to me with that scenario. And they don't know that, they don't realize that they're doing it. It's the scarcity, I know this, is, kind of like a familiar term, but it's a scarcity mindset. Even people saying things to themselves like, oh, I'm going to go into business, I'm going to help myself, but I'm not going to do anything until my website's perfect. Or I'm just going to keep studying that. Once I've done that, then I'll go into business. And so this is a form of self-sabotage, because what they're actually doing is staying in that fear.
Yeah, procrastination is a self-sabotaging technique. Yeah,
absolutely. And they don't realize they're doing it. So it's almost like they're, and I say we actually, because I've gone through this. So we will label it under perfectionism when it's actually hiding from fear and procrastinating. And most of the clients who come to me, that's where they're actually at. And so that's why I take them through the mindset first, help them to develop their self-confidence, their self-love in themselves. Because to run a business, you need to do things like I'm doing now. Put yourself out there, have interviews, go live on social media. So we need to have that self-love. And if you've survived trauma, it's not that easy to just, people will say, just get out there and do a Facebook Live. That's not really easy to do that when you are struggling with your self-belief. Right?
Definitely. I repeat often that you attract to yourself that what you think you deserve. So
Yes.
The lesser your self-esteem, the more the negative, the lower what you will attract to yourself and what you will expect. The more our self-esteem grows, the more we expect from life, from others, from the respect we receive from others. So the more we, I guess, the more we work on the self-esteem, the better we get, the better results we get. And then, of course, mindset is obviously the pillar to grow the business we can do. And you're absolutely right. Someone who suffered trauma has such a debilitating. I spoke a couple of times. I used the term of being handicapped, or that we have a disability, an invisible disability. We have that mental disability. We have this reflexes because of the trauma and because of the negative experience or the PTSD. We have these automated reactions.
Yes.
And I mean, even in the mindset, in the way we think, in the way we process information. And so I often say it's an invisible disability because nobody can really tell, and we function really well, but it's like always seemingly an uphill battle to go against everything that's been indoctrinated for years in our brain. So it is very, and I hope people really get from what you're saying also to really realize, and I think it's the third time I say this, we talk about that in these episodes, is that violence is not necessarily physical, and actually 80% of the cases it's mental. So a lot of people don't realize that mental violence is something real. It's not because you don't have bruises on your face or your arms that you're not bruised inside. So building that back up is a challenge. I do agree.
I actually had a moment, and to this day, I don't actually remember whether I said it out loud to my first husband or whether I just thought it. But I remember at least thinking, can you just hit me? And when and that's not something I thought or said lightly, but it was because, like you said, the bruises were on the inside. And so people didn't know what was happening to me because they couldn't physically see it, and I couldn't physically show them. So even when even even when I would go and tell my parents what was happening, you know, very supportive parents, they didn't understand the level of it because I didn't have anything to show them, you know. So it was like, just hit me, you know, bruise me. And that this is no disrespect to anybody who has experienced physical violence. I want to say that because it's not nice, but that's where I got to mentally, because my bruises want the inside. And so
I totally understand how it feels, and and you're right. Nobody can understand or even believe the level of stress, or the level of the place we are in terms of anxiety, depression, and self-destruction, just because of the abuse, this kind of non-physical abuse that is ongoing 24/7. And I remember I shared, like, I told some people some things that were happening, but they took it lightly because that one instant, of course, was not much. But they didn't understand that this is 24/7, from the moment you wake up till the moment you go to bed, day in, day out, all the time, and being isolated, being being controlled, being manipulated, having others being manipulated against us. So at the end, we are the focus and the central point of non-physical violence from a lot of other people. And it comes to a point, like you said, where we don't see any other option than taking our own life, just because we cannot, we feel it's impossible to get out. And so, yeah, I agree with you. The working on the mindset for startup ladies who live through that is quite a challenge already. But once you have that under your control, then it's downhill, right? After that, it's quite easier.
It becomes easier. I wouldn't say it's easy, but it becomes easier. Like I said, you know, earlier, this is, I mean, I have been through a lot of stuff, and I'm constantly working on my mindset. I'm still recovering from this, but I am, if you like, fortunate to have gotten to a place now where I feel in my own self-confidence good enough to be able to come here, share my story the way I'm sharing it. You know, it's not without emotion, trust me, because I'm feeling everything, and you would get this too. I'm feeling everything that I'm telling you. But, you know, it's just, you know, I love teaching and helping my girls from the heart because I've lived it. I'm constantly on a recovery journey myself, and I teach them that yes, you know, yes, you can come and do what I'm doing as well. It just takes a little bit of work to be able to get to that level. And so
yes, it's good to have someone to accompany you on that journey. Doing it alone is almost impossible. So I always say everybody needs a coach. Everybody needs a coach. You can't do it alone. So what would you give if you had one advice to give either to people who are in the situation or just came out of a domestic violence situation? What advice would you give them?
I would say that you don't need to do this alone. If you are in a situation, or if you are coming out of and recovering from a situation, for every one of you out there who are experiencing this type of thing, there are so many of us. There are probably 10 of us here who've already gone through it, who understand you, and who are ready to just wrap our arms around you and support you and help you in your recovery journey. And that is the biggest piece of advice I can give anybody who's either in or just out of that situation, is you do not need to do it alone. We want to help you, particularly those of us like, you know, both of us here, we know what it's like, and we want to help you. From the bottom of my heart, we want to help you.
And I believe that. You know, I've been a coach for many years, and there was not a more gratifying validating point than to see that we've helped someone, you know, cross the finish line, or, you know, feel better and achieve things they couldn't even imagine achieving before. So I totally understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I
There's
want to, yeah.
sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
Sorry, I was just going to say that there's actually nothing that I love more than watching one of my clients have, like, I love in a session watching their face change. It's like they're, you know, that they come to a session and they'll, you know, they'll just be really down on themselves. And throughout the session, you can see their whole entire being changing. And by the end of it, they're smiling. And I just, that's what I love to watch. It's like, oh, yes, that's how I want you to feel.
Oh, I totally get it. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm glad. You know, we need people like you, definitely, to help. And I know more and more help will be needed. So I'm glad that we've met. And what I'll do, Ali, is under this video I'll put a link so that people can find you, but you can also share how is the best way for people to find you if they're looking for you.
Sure. So I love to connect with people on Facebook. So my name is Ali Sugars on Facebook. That's my personal profile. Feel free to just private message me and let me know that you have watched this interview. And also, if you would like to book in and have a personal chat with me, it's called a business booster call, and we can talk about where you're at personally and, you know, what your aspirations are for business. I'll pop the link. We'll put a link there too, so you can book in for one of those calls with me in person.
Wonderful. Well, I hope you get many calls and that you help a ton more people. And I'm really appreciative that that you came today and shared your story and what you've learned from it. I really do.
And thank you so much for allowing people like me the platform to come and share our stories, because, you know, the thing, you know, it's so good to be able to help be an inspiration to other people. So thank you very much for what you're doing as well.
Thank you. Well, you know, what happened is I didn't share for my entire life. And then this summer, I saw one post of a girl who died, and it just hit me so deeply, to a level that I didn't expect. And so I thought, why am I hiding? Why am I not sharing my story? And I realized that I felt really ashamed and guilty. And I thought, wait a minute, why am I feeling ashamed and guilty over something that happened to me? And then it was like, well, I can't share because it's a family taboo. And then I thought, why am I thinking that it's a family taboo? And I thought, if I share, I might save one life. If I share, maybe I might save one life. And that will have been worth, all what I've lived will have been worth the fact that because of it, I saved one life. It would make everything else worthwhile. And so that's why I started all of this, the Facebook group, the YouTube channel. I want to develop a fund, because I want to have a fund dedicated to wallet to wallet, no interest lending to victims, so that they can have cash to get out. Yeah. So that they don't have to hide and try to find money, but to have this app to get, you know, 1,000, 2,000, doesn't matter. They don't have to think about giving it back until they have enough, and it would be just giving back to the next person. You know, I think it's really fundamental, because I know it's one way that victims are kept victimized is through financial abuse. And so I really want to change that. And thanks to people like you who come on this channel, hopefully we will help save many lives and bring more awareness, so that people really understand what it is, even if you're not a victim, to understand what we live through, so that they have more compassion, more understanding of what we've lived through and who we are, with that as a past, who we became. So thank you a lot, Ali, for being here and sharing. I really appreciate it. I'll post her link below, and thank you all for watching. Please subscribe to our channel, share the videos so we can reach more people, save more lives. You can come on narcissisticabusedvictims.com if you want more information about what I'm doing, and of course to our Facebook group, because it's becoming really a safe haven to share stories, support one another. I feel my heart is warmed when I read all the discussions, and the group is becoming really, really a warm place to be, safe and protected. So come join us, and thank you all for being here and watching till the end. Thank you. Have a great day.